Whenever Brooklyn Guy tells a story, you can expect to sit back and hear a fun tale where they usually always end up with Brooklyn Guy in some type of ridiculous situation. With stories like Mad Eyes McGee,
actual stick up his ass, just stuck up there.
Katie Knockers with the big ham hockers,
She was the hottest, bustiest girl in school.
and even stories like Tyreek the Turtle,
And on your mark, get set, go! And he shot off the gun.
which are all stories that follow that fun pattern. But through its upbeat and funny tone, sometimes the stories hide a darker, more sinister picture. I've put together 5 different stories that Brooklyn Guy has told, and we're going to be taking a look at which one is the darkest one. Let's begin. The first story we're going to be taking a look at is featured in SML movie Cody's Wisdom Teeth, where we first hear about the tale of Wisdom Tooth Willie.
Well, you don't want to end up like Wisdom Teeth Willie. Who's Wisdom Teeth Willie? Well, I'm on the clock. I don't really have time to tell a story. Okay, I will.
The story starts off like your average Brooklyn Guy story, where we're introduced to Willie for the first time, who is revealed to have a strange wisdom teeth obsession.
This freak had a wisdom teeth shrine in his locker. He even sold wisdom teeth merch.
He eats teeth for breakfast, has a tooth collection, and even has his own teeth merchandise. But the second half of the video is where things start to get really, really dark. Where one day, our friend Willie wakes up to see that his wisdom teeth are finally growing in. But this isn't your normal wisdom teeth situation, because his teeth never stopped growing.
He was literally almost cast in the live-action remake of the movie Ice Age as Manny the Mammoth.
Alright, little Nintendo fact here. I've been lucky enough to personally never need to have my wisdom teeth pulled out, and every time I look in the mirror, they're still back there. But for Wisdom Teeth Willie over here, his wisdom teeth grew so big they began sticking out of his mouth.
His wisdom teeth got so big, he couldn't even open his mouth to eat. They had to drill a hole through his teeth and put a straw through it to feed him.
He could no longer eat, he couldn't drink, and he definitely could no longer speak. His once love for teeth turned into his biggest, living, painful nightmare. And if that wasn't horrifying enough, that's not even how the story ends. Let's let Brooklyn Guy finish the story.
And put a straw through it to feed him. He eventually ended up starving to death when he realized he didn't like soup.
So there you have it. As quick as we are to learn about Willie, we're just as quick to know about his demise. From the overgrown wisdom teeth, to the pain it caused, to even leading to his own death, this makes Wisdom Teeth Willie one of the darkest Brooklyn Guy stories. Moving on to our second story now, which is told in SML movie Jeffy's Mail Order Bride. We learn about the story of Gary Glue Lips, the man who loves eating glue.
Your mouth being glued shut reminds me of this guy I went to high school with, Gary Glue Lips. I'm gonna tell you about him.
In the same fashion as Wisdom Tooth Willie, we learn that Gary is also a classmate Brooklyn Guy went to school with, who had a huge love for glue, even correlating his outfits with the color of an Elmer's glue bottle.
Everybody would point at him and say, glue eater, glue ass, but he loved it. He didn't care what anyone thought of him, and I thought that was pretty cool.
But then things take a dark turn when we learn halfway through the video that our good friend Gary has died. Brooklyn Guy reveals that he misheard Gary, assuming because he had so much glue in his mouth, thinking he asked for a pair of shoes, when in reality, he was asking for a parachute for their skydiving lesson.
And he said, don't forget the parachutes, but I thought he said pair of shoes.
Alright, listen. I feel like even with that much glue in his mouth, you can definitely put the pieces together and assume he needed a parachute since they were about to go jumping out of an airplane, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So now it's time for the skydiving to begin, and here's how it plays out.
When he jumped out of the plane and he went to deploy his parachute, a pair of Nike Air Jordans came out and he hit the ground and died. I was so confused because they were Air Jordans, but I guess that didn't matter.
Even though Brooklyn Guy tells his story in such an upbeat, happy-go-lucky tone, if you look at the closer picture here, Brooklyn Guy is single-handedly responsible for the death of one of his classmates. A death that even though clearly he does not care about, it's a death that has to live with him for the rest of his life, because had he put the pieces together and gave Gary the parachute he was asking for, he would definitely still be here today. Okay, I mean, honestly, he'd probably still be dead from drinking glue for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but we'll never truly know thanks to Brooklyn Guy being the direct cause for Gary's death, making this the 4th darkest story. Okay, our next story is somehow one of the funniest stories, but also has a very dark ending once you look a little bit deeper into it. That story being told in SML movie Jeffy's Voice Problem, where we first hear the tale of Ballbuster Brooklyn.
Well, when I was younger, I was the king at kicking people in the nuts.
You don't have legs.
Exactly.
This is one of the most iconic stories where Brooklyn guy goes on the biggest ball kicking spree, kicking everyone from his classmates to his own father in the balls.
Just laying on the ground, holding their balls. And I thought I was the kickball champion because everybody was calling me Ballbuster Brooklyn.
Now where the story gets really dark is the final minute of the story, where Brooklyn guy's addiction with ball kicking gets so bad, he's forced to go away to therapy, where even then he kicks his own therapist in the nuts. This leads to Brooklyn guy being sent to a mental institution where he's so unhinged he had to be put into a straitjacket with the other patients in there.
Me in a straitjacket. But my legs were still free, so I kept kicking people in the balls.
The addiction got so bad, you can see him freaking out and twitching on the ground after they finally got his legs restrained, where his eyes are so bulged and bloodshot, looking like a possessed man.
My parents and the teachers and the doctors and the cops and Bill Clinton, who was president at the time, they all got together and were trying to figure out what to do about me.
It was no longer a fun little silly thing Brooklyn guy did to his fellow friends. This was now a serious mental addiction. And how does that story end? Well, it ends with Brooklyn guy revealing they had no choice but to take him to the hospital and have the doctors amputate his legs.
But if I had my legs back, I'd kick you in the balls, I'd kick you in the balls, I'd somehow surgically give you balls and then kick you in the balls.
Seeing how fast this story went from Brooklyn guy playing kickball with his classmates in gym class to ending up getting his legs ripped off, this earns its spot as the number 3 darkest story. And if you thought those first 3 stories were dark, wait until you hear this next one, which is featured in SML movie Cody Works at Red Lobster, where Brooklyn guy reveals to Cody and Junior how he too once lost a childhood pet.
Oh yeah, I hate when that happens. Yeah, I remember when my fish died.
You had a pet fish that died?
And so we learn about the time that Brooklyn guy lost his pet goldfish, where during Bring Your Pet to School Day, Brooklyn guy brought in his pet fish Stinky.
There were cats and dogs and snakes and iguanas, cool pets. All I had was my stupid fish.
But soon after, the story begins unraveling when we're introduced to fish thrower Felix, who, right in front of Brooklyn guy, rips the poor goldfish out of the tank and throws him right into the road. And if that isn't traumatizing enough for a kid in elementary school to see, coming down the road at 50 miles per hour is no other than Old Man Teddy, who's driving his huge monster truck.
But Old Man Teddy couldn't hear at all, and he was blind as a bat, and he couldn't drive, so he ran right over my fish.
Where after squishing Brooklyn guy's goldfish right in front of him, he began to drive over 6 cars, ending 12 people's lives, and not only that, he then crashed the car into the side of a children's hospital, exploding it and leading to even more deaths.
It was an honest-to-God disaster. I mean, it was a national tragedy. It was all over the news.
All of that right there is enough to traumatize a kid for the rest of their life. But to make it even worse, Brooklyn guy had to run outside to the crime scene and find his poor goldfish completely smeared into the ground. And that's it. That's how the story ends. No happy ending, just a dark, dark story in an upbeat tone about how Brooklyn guy's childhood pet goldfish got killed, making this the second darkest story. We made it, the number 1 darkest story, and this one, everyone, is a no-brainer for me. That being the story told in SML movie, Jeffy's Pinch Problem. This was a St. Patrick's Day video, and of course Brooklyn guy had to tell his own St. Patrick's Day story. And no, this is not the Miss Dickham's Pinch one. This story right here is dark right from the start, where Brooklyn guy jumps right into it and reveals how his great-great-grandmother died and it was time for her funeral.
Hey, St. Patrick's Day? That reminds me of a St. Patrick's Day story I have.
Her funeral fell on St. Patrick's Day, and of course the tradition goes, if you don't wear green somewhere on your body, you're getting a big old pinch. Now there's also something called time and place, and a funeral is definitely not the time to be playing this pinch game. So anyway, Brooklyn guy in his big green suit goes to the funeral, and as you would suspect, no one else there is wearing green.
I said, all you guys are and I went around pinching everybody.
He has his uncles, his aunts, his nieces, everyone's crying. And no, the story just doesn't end there, because coming up is the darkest moment in any Brooklyn guy story, where Brooklyn guy decides for the main event of this funeral, he is going to pinch his great-great-grandmother Joanne's dead body.
The whole funeral home was mortified. That was the saddest day for my family, but the happiest day for me.
Look how huge his smile is. Brooklyn guy is having the time of his life, squeezing his dead great-grandmother's cheeks while bodily fluids are flying out everywhere in the funeral as his family sits there traumatized, easily making this the most disturbing and dark story. So there you have it. While 95% of Brooklyn Guy's stories are harmless and give you a good laugh, sometimes he reveals a little bit too much information and you can see a darker side to the life of Brooklyn Guy. If you enjoyed the video, leave a thumbs up and let me know down below if you agree with the list I made, or if you found any videos that may be a little bit darker. Until next time, see you in the next animation. Peace out.